How's it going, everybody? It's the John Little Fox. This is my show where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today I'm here to talk about X-Men 97. So, um, yeah, I've talked about X-Men 97 a couple of times on my live streams and all that stuff, but I decided, you know what? Screw it. Since I watched the show and a lot of people were talking about it, I figured I'd make my own review and give you my incomplete thoughts about X-Men 97 and stuff. So I'll tell you the stuff that I didn't like. I'll tell you the stuff that I did like. Um, and then I'll tell you about the characters and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's get right into it. All right, so I'm gonna tell you a story about how I first got introduced to the X Men. So back in the day, my mom had these old these old child books and stuff about the X Men or Spider Man or the Hulk or something, and I remember they had the '90s style of the X Men, even though I never watched the '90s cartoon at the time until I was a teenager, because the show kind of ended after before I was even born. Although that didn't stop me from watching Spider Man the animated series, because I had tons of DVDs and stuff of Spider Man the animated series, um, and they used to show a lot more of the reruns then on Disney or something. But but back in the day though, yeah, that's probably one of my earliest introductions to X Men. Then I think I remember I used to have my I think my older sister, she used to have a coloring book or something of the X Men actually. I think we used to color that in when we were kids. But apart from that, my first real introduction to X Men was probably X2, because my mom, she actually owned X Men 2 on DVD. So eventually I kept borrowing it from her room when I was still in elementary school, and eventually she just kind of gave it to me because I loved the movie so much. And this is back in, again, the 2000s, where movies like Daredevil, I never really watched Elektra until later. Ghost Rider, never really seen Ghost Rider. Fantastic Four, I did watch Fantastic Four way back in 2005. Those movies would come out, and of course the old Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, um, which yeah, I've been watching that ever since day one when that first came out. But yeah, all those movies that came out back in the day, if you remember, the good old days, before the MCU and all that. And I'm not shitting on the MCU, but I'm just saying those movies had existed then. Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, all that stuff, great movies. All right. So X2 was my first introduction to the X Men, and then eventually I ended up getting X1 and X3 on DVD thanks to my aunt, who she got it for me for Christmas and all that. And I also saw X3 in the movies too, around the same time as I saw Spider-Man 3, so that was pretty cool. So those are some. I know they're a little bit controversial. There were some they weren't really good movies like that, or it could have been better. But looking back, but to be honest with you, Spider-Man 3 and X3, they had a lot of good, memorable moments, some really good acting, um, good soundtrack, all that stuff. There's a lot you can come back to those movies and watch for a reason. But anyways, but back on topic. So the earlier X Men trilogy, that was my first introduction to X Men, and also the X Men Evolution cartoon, because that was kind of my generation of X Men at the time. And then eventually Wolverine the X Men came out, and I've also been watching that probably since 2009 2010 when it first came out. It could have been 2011, but it came out around the time when I was a preteen, so that was pretty cool. And then yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. But back in the day, yeah, X Men used to be really popular and stuff. It was kind of second to Spider Man in terms of popularity, because they had a lot of colorful and a lot of vibrant and a lot of good heroes and stuff. Of course, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, Rogue, Colossus, of course, Nightcrawler, Professor X himself. There were plenty of heroes and stuff, and they had plenty of villains like Juggernaut, Magneto. Um, Arcade's probably not a really popular character like that, but yeah, Arcade, Apocalypse. They had a lot of good, yeah. So yeah. And then I didn't really watch X Men the animated series until I was kind of a teenager. So I was probably 15 or 16 when I finally saw it, um, because that's where it was a lot more accessible on the internet. But yeah. So definitely, that was some of my earlier exposures to X Men, back in the day. And on top of that, X Men compared to Spider Man and stuff, or compared to most other Marvel brands or properties, X Men, like I said, it came second to Spider Man. but they have just about like just like they have um pretty much just as much like cartoons or video games, just like almost on par with Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man is the only thing that I would say surpasses the X-Men in terms of popularity, but X-Men has probably more video games and more cartoons than any other X-Men or any other Marvel like series, even including the Avengers. Not too many Avenger games that I can think of. X-Men, they got a lot of games, like they got X-Men Mutant Academy 1 and 2, X-Men Dimensions, what else? Wolverine's Revenge, X-Men Legends. I think there was a second X-Men Legends too. What else? Like, I mean, they have plenty of like X-Men games. Hell, if you want to count Street Fighter versus X-Men, that was technically, yeah, that's an X-Men game. Like, they had a lot more video games. So that was pretty cool. So those are some of my earlier exposures to like X-Men and all that. Speaking of which, I actually did used to play Wolverine. I mean, not Wolverine. X-Men versus the Street Fighter on an old arcade machine that used to be at like an arcade. So that was pretty cool too. But yeah, kind of sucks that it's not on a console or anything though, because I would have loved to continue to keep playing it. But that's pretty much my exposure and my story with X-Men. I still think it's a good series, and I feel like, yeah, that's probably one of the missing ingredients to kind of make Marvel a lot more better, because they have so many like good heroes from the X-Men series, like that are diverse or very interesting or has some very creative powers and stuff, which I always found the powers inside X-Men to be very creative. You got like Wolverine, who can like, he's his like, he can pop his claws or whatever, and then he can use it like a weapon. Or you got Storm, who controls the weather. I mean, you think, oh, lightning. That's a cool ability too, or controlling water or air. But nah, Storm got the whole thing. Or Cyclops' optic blast, and he can't like really control it like that. Or you got Rogue with her parasitic touch. Like, so many creative powers. Or even Magneto, who has literally the power of magnetism itself, which you never really thought about it. But oh shit, that is very dangerous to control metal and stuff. So all those abilities, I always found that to be very creative, and I used to like X-Men for that. Alright, so if you're familiar with my format of how I carry out my videos when I'm talking about something good or bad, when I'm talking about something good, I like to talk about the bad first before I get to the good. And when I'm talking about something bad, I like to at least talk about a little bit of the good before I get to the bad. So in this case, I'm going to talk about the bad before I get to the good, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to talk about the stuff that I didn't like about 97, and I'll talk about the things that I did like, and then I'll talk about the characters and my thoughts about the story itself and everything, and then I'll tell you what do I rank the show. Okay? So the stuff that I didn't like was that I didn't like the whole Morph being non-binary and him having a crush on Wolverine, which I'll explain that in a second. I didn't like some of the character models. Storm's life-death arc and Forge's relationship kind of just came off as like rushed and forced in my opinion. Madeline's story was kind of also rushed, or her arc was definitely. Sunspot being a little bit cowardly, I wasn't really a huge fan of that. Like, I understand that he's kind of new, but again, I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, so let me start explaining that. Alright, so this is my first impression on X-Men 97 before I even started watching the show. So when I heard Disney or Marvel Animations hired and fired a gay black man called Bo DeMeo for unknown reasons, possibly because he has an OnlyFans account, which he doesn't do anything. Like, I'm not saying like I know this as if I went on there, but I'm just saying like I hear he doesn't really do anything like sexual related on there or whatever. He just happens to own OnlyFans. I don't know what he does on there, but I heard they've debunked the whole he doesn't do anything weird or sexual and that. But anyways, but before the show kind of premiered, they kind of fired him and stuff, and I kind of assumed that the show was kind of dead on arrival. It's kind of like with Ant-Man 3. You know how like Ant-Man 3 they had to like reshoot some scenes like 5 months before the premiere, and I was like, wait, what? And then the movie, yeah, I mean, I didn't watch Ant-Man 3 to be honest with you. I saw the first two, but I didn't bother with 3 after that. Once I heard that, I was like, oh. And then I heard, bad word of mouth from it, and I was like, you know what? I'm definitely not going to watch this movie then. But anyways, but what I heard was like in that they were like kind of bringing back the old show from the 90s just to kind of nostalgia bait. I thought they were kind of doing something like a Kevin Smith kind of take on like He-Man, where they brought back like He-Man and then they changed it up or ignored certain things about the continuity. and all that from the old show, and basically they later on came out and just admitted that it's a reboot, which is probably for the best because I hate that that would be tied to the original series. But this, I actually think this is actually pretty good. But let me keep talking about the bad. So then they kind of were like leading with this whole Morph being retcon to be like non-binary, so he can kind of identify as they them because he's a shapeshifter, which that doesn't make any sense because like Mystique and any other shapeshifter, they all have a base form that they involuntarily revert to when knocked out or depowered. So unless like you're like some kind of sexless being like a slime, for example, when they like kind of like shapeshift their outsides but not their insides, then antagonize the people who like have a problem with this. Like, yeah, of course I have a problem with this because I don't want to hear about it. And no, it's not because fans are homophobic, because we have no problem with Kevin Conroy voicing Batman, who many consider to be the best all time Batman ever. Didn't know he was gay, never mattered. Or Ian McKellen as Magneto, because they played those characters and their sexuality wasn't brought up or hadn't like had an impact on that character, just their performance, which that's the way we prefer it. So we the fans just kind of recognize the tokenism and the pandering when we kind of see it, or when it's like superficial things that just get brought up, like, yeah, like why bring up that, for example, Bo DeMeo, right? Why bring up that, oh, it's written by a gay black man? Now I'm like, okay, now I'm kind of concerned because I just care about the quality of the writing. I don't care about the guy's sexuality, or I don't care about his race. I'm like, okay, but is he good though? you know? And that's just what it kind of seemed like on the top of like just recasting Jubilee for like her being, oh, now because Jubilee's, well, Jubilee has always been Asian American, but let's recast her voice actor for an Asian American role. And I'm just like, well, what was the purpose of that? It sounds like that Big Mouth thing where they recasted Missy, if I'm not mistaken, to be played by some black girl or whatever. And I was like, okay. I mean, I think she sounded better though, but still, it's just like the principle though. Not to mention the current X-Men comics they have not been doing too well. I mean, it's kind of been shitty storylines in recent years, which kind of sounded like TMNT's mutant. Like, if you guys are familiar with my channel, it sounds to me like it's like TMNT's Mutant Town, like Mutant Town's arc, but 10 times more worse than that. Okay, and I hate the Mutant Town arc because I'm keeping up with it, but goddamn it, I hear much worse about Krakoa. Okay, I've never read a single issue, but I've been hearing about it, and I'm like, damn, this is so bad. It's not even funny. So I had plenty of reasons to kind of think that this show would just like kind of just outright suck. But luckily, I was kind of wrong. Morph being non-binary never came up, except his weird one-sided crush on Wolverine. That was still kind of weird. Jubilee's voice actress was fine, and the old one came back to voice the older version of her, so that was pretty nice too. And it had it had the spirit of the comic and the cartoon, so it wasn't kind of skipping a beat. So that's why I do actually consider this the '97 series to definitely be a good successor to the original X-Men the animated series. But that's just me. All right. So my other criticisms outside of the first impression were the character models, for starters. Now, just to clarify, I like the designs and the animation, as in like the characters appear and move, but I don't like the character models, as in like their physical look. Like, I'm not a huge fan of like certain ones, like Rogue, for example. She used to be very sexually appealing, even like back in the old cartoons, but her like here her body or her anatomy is kind of like toned down immensely, and it's not just like a female body type, although like the Goblin Queen does get a pass, but the men as well, like Professor X and Magneto, they have these like pasty white lips and stuff. Not all the men, like not all the male characters have it, but like Professor X and Magneto, for example, they have these like pasty white lips and stuff that kind of make Magneto look like Granny Goodness from like Superman or something. So if they lose like the extra details on the lips, for those ones, I think it definitely could be like more better, and then also give them some more complexion, or give their complexion more like saturation and stuff, because it's just like But yeah, then one of my major problems with the story is that it's like kind of rushed, likely because they kind of try to cram everything into like 10 episodes, So the main two being Madeline's entire character arc and Storm's character arcs, as well as her relationship with Forge, is like what I would say is like the most rushed storylines in the series so far. So spoilers, by the way. But basically, Madeline goes from like thinking she's Jean Grey and realizing that she's her like clone to turning evil and becoming the Goblin Queen to reforming and leaving on good terms with Jean to becoming a politician or ambassador to her cheating with Scott to her dying in front of her son Cable, all within 5 episodes. As for Storm, it's cool she had some focus while going through the struggle of losing her powers, like in the comics. But it just seemed like they just put scenes like that they were like a little key, in like the post credits or just skipped around with the timeline, where some of that could have been like important or needed for like fleshing out. But the end of her arc, where she kind of conquered her fear, got her powers back, exchanged her mohawk for her long wavy hair, and got her '80s outfit on, and showed off Storm like she was Superman from Man of Steel or something. When it started, like when he started flying and everything for the first time, that was actually pretty cool. That's the best part of the life death arc. But everything about it, but like everything else though, I'm like, yeah, I stand on what I said about it though. All right, so this is my last complaint. So, and it's about Sunspot. Now, I don't mind Sunspot being a newcomer on the team, but before the last episode, Sunspot hardly used his powers and acted like a complete civilian. Like, I understand that he's not used to like a bunch of perils, but still, I'm just going to myself like you could still lend it, like lend him a hand or use your powers at some point. But he kind of came through towards the end, though. I'm not gonna lie. So, like like that's definitely something. Like where he was saving Jubilee and Rogue and was like fighting Bastion. Thought that was pretty cool. Personally, I think a better way that they could have like that could have definitely been handled better was to turn Xavier's Institute into like a school where you can kind of like introduce a lot more mutants and X-Men members. Like I already know it's a school, but I'm saying like they definitely could have like expanded upon it versus it's just like, well, it's the X-Men there, but there's no students or no other students apart from like Jubilee and Sunspot. And Jubilee can kind of become like an assistant teacher or something, and they could use that to develop her a little bit more. But I almost have no complaints about Nintendo and how they kind of like how that episode kind of did mature her, so that was pretty nice. It is filler and it is a skippable episode, but it's just yeah, it's all right. But so far, those are just my gripes with the series so far, and I have almost like a lot more positive things to say than I do for negative. So buckle down for that. Alright, so basically the story of X-Men 97 is the X-Men basically continue saving the world in the absence of Professor X and fighting for mutant kind. They recruit Roberto da Costa, also known as Sunspot, a part of their team, with their arch nemesis Magneto, who has reformed to become the new leader of the X-Men. Cyclops and Jean Grey Summers give birth to their newborn son, Nathan Charles Summers, who is later revealed to be the time traveler known as Cable. They've encountered before. And it's also revealed that Nathan's actual mom is a clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister, a past villain and mutant geneticist. Then, the prejudice of man and mutant kind continue after a massive genocide has occurred, resulting in the death of X-Men member Remy LeBeau, also known as Gambit. And the genocide is actually a conspiracy by the future Sentinel named Bastion, who succeeds Nimrod and Mastermold. Now, the X-Men must find a way to stop him, along with Sinister, from taking over the future. Alright, so I'm going to talk about the characters for a little bit that was in, the main characters that are inside X-Men 97. So, starting with Cyclops. Now, Cyclops was definitely shown to be a good, stern leader and a fighter. He's deeply affected by the abandonment of his son, the loss of Madeline, and he's conflicted with his relationship with Jean Grey after realizing that he's been with a clone for a while. And honestly, Cyclops is going through a dilemma that no one else can really understand the hardship of, except for maybe Spider-Man, because I find it to be it's funny because Spider-Man went through the exact same thing. I don't think anyone's mentioned this, but in this universe, Spider-Man, he is also in love with a redhead and stuff. Mary Jane, and then Mary Jane disappears, and then he accidentally gets married to the water clone of Mary Jane, and the water clone ends up dying, and Spider-Man later on tries to go through other dimensions and stuff to save the real Mary Jane, that kind of thing. So I gotta say that's kind of a little bit like what Cyclops is going through. Although I know what Cyclops went through is also what happened in the comics. But I think Madeline was originally supposed to be like a whole other character removed from Jean, and then later on they changed it where yeah, she was a clone of Jean, and Sinister had basically like planned for her to like that kind of thing. But anyways, but yeah, but still, it's nice seeing Cyclops though. Definitely get some love, get some focus and stuff for once. I mean, I'm pretty sure he got some love and focus back in the '90s show. He definitely did, and definitely inside X-Men Evolution. Wolverine and the X-Men, the cartoon. Cyclops is actually all right, but the thing was that like Cyclops wasn't the leader because he just wasn't like because after Jean's presumed death or whatever, Cyclops has been kind of depressed and he wasn't really fit to like really lead the team and all that stuff. So yeah, like I said, he was all right and he has some episodes like some good episodes, and he kind of was a badass too sometimes, but still, Cyclops, yeah, man. But yeah, and that's just the cartoons, and then in the movies, Jesus Christ, in the movies, man, they did Cyclops terribly. Like, and I'm not saying because the actor or anything. I think the actor, he looked the part. He did a good job as Cyclops. But the problem with Cyclops was that, like, man, they really underutilized him. Like in the first movie, Cyclops is all right. I mean, he's like a little bit of a doormat for Wolverine, where Wolverine kind of just walks over him and stuff sometimes. But I mean, they did have a little bit of a back and forth thing. And then Wolverine stole his motorcycle and stuff a couple of times. Like, yeah, that's what I mean by like they used him like a doormat or whatever. And then the second movie, Cyclops, he takes out a few guards and stuff trying to like protect him and Professor X, but he gets one-shotted by Lady Deathstrike, and then he gets captured, and then he's pretty much gone throughout majority of the entire movie. Even though X2 is a good movie, he is gone throughout majority of the entire movie until towards the end where he's brainwashed. He's kidnapped and brainwashed by William Stryker. He attacks Jean, they get into a fight, and he's finally free from the control and all that stuff, and then he continues to like, help out the other X-Men and stuff up until like Jean's presumed death. And then in the third movie, Cyclops is killed literally in the beginning of the movie. Like, like Professor X is kind of giving up on Cyclops because Cyclops is depressed over Jean's death and everything, only for him to like, find out that she's alive, and then she kills him because she's like her powers and stuff are like is just too strong to control. And then Jean goes on a whole killing spree and teams up with Magneto. Yeah, it's a lot. And then Cyclops, he doesn't come back until really X-Men Days of the Future Past, so like in the end of the movie where he's revived thanks to the whole time skip. But who knows, because in Logan, a couple of X-Men members had kind of died, so we don't know if Cyclops could have been included in that lineup of X-Men that were killed. And then he had some cameos and stuff inside First Class and X-Men Origins Wolverine. He was in that movie, but he was again captured by William Stryker, and he had his DNA taken to give to Deadpool and all that stuff to give him the little optic powers. Which I'm not gonna lie, I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but I really did like Wolverine Origins. I thought it was a pretty good movie. What they did with Deadpool, though, I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of stupid and criminal. But you can't lie, that fight with him versus Wolverine and Sabretooth was like one of the best fucking fights in the X-Men franchise. Like, you cannot lie. That fight was fucking awesome, okay? But that's just me. Now, yeah, but that's pretty much as far as the movie goes. And then, yeah, he's in Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, where they're trying to kind of build him up a little bit more better into a more confident leader. But, yeah, and then, his brother Alex dies. But, yeah, that's pretty much Cyclops' history through the movies. So it's definitely nice seeing Cyclops back on track. And then he's kind of a dictator, by the way, in the comics, too, I hear. Like, I don't really read the X-Men comics, but yeah, they've been making Cyclops like some kind of terrorist dictator and shit. And I think that's like really just, I know Cyclops is a little bit myopic sometimes or whatever as a leader, and he's a little stern, but I feel like, yeah, they went way left field with all that stuff with Cyclops, in my opinion. But yeah, but as far as this goes, I think in this cartoon, he's definitely good so far. It's nice seeing him in action and all that stuff, being a hero, being a leader, being a little witty and stuff. He has no problem standing up to like Wolverine, and I'm just like, dude, just listen to this guy. He's your leader. You gotta follow him for a reason. I'm not saying you can't question him from time to time, but damn. But yeah, but it's definitely nice seeing Cyclops back on top. But yeah, and then him having this whole arc with Jean and Madeline and definitely Cable. That's probably some of my favorite parts, but I'll talk about more about that later. Anyways, Jean is a pretty good character. Beast is a pretty good character. Morph, outside of my prior rant, and that was like just stupid and out of nowhere, the crush on Wolverine. Morph is a decent character. I mean, he likes to joke around with his powers via the trolling, like he did back in the old cartoon. And to my surprise, his powers are actually kind of good in battle. Like he kind of uses like the power, like the skill set and the body types of like certain characters to his advantage. And it's meant for like fan service, but so far he kind of morphed into Psylocke, Magic, Juggernaut, Quicksilver, the Hulk, and anyone else I might have missed. But other than that, yeah, I was like, because I was just going to myself, like, what's the purpose of having Morph on the roster when he can't, like, I mean, all he does is shapeshift. I'm not saying shapeshifting is a useless ability, but I'm just saying it doesn't give him the powers or anything, but apparently he can do something with it. So I'm like, okay, all right, so I like that. Anyways, Wolverine. So Logan has already given, like, he's kind of given up pursuing Jean. He kind of helps like her like give birth, and also kind of convinces her to like stay with Scott when she starts getting like second thoughts. And he doesn't really do much apart from like fight Sentinels and later Magneto. So some think that Wolverine was really underutilized, but given everyone's like storyline and how overused Wolverine has been in movies, cartoons, and video games, I don't mind him being shelved because with the span of 10 episodes and the story being told, I don't see how Wolverine's plots related to Weapon X would like fit with the Sinister stuff, who's like a more of a personal villain towards Scott and Jean. Maybe in the next season we can probably get like Lady Deathstrike, Omega Red, Silver Samurai, Sabretooth, and maybe even Deadpool. I really want to see Deadpool. I kind of wanted. I'm not gonna lie to you. I definitely did want to see Deadpool in X-Men '97 though. I'm not gonna lie to you, because I like the Merc with the mouth. What can I say? And then Jubilee. I know Jubilee isn't the most well-received character, but it's kind of nice seeing Jubilee. She's all right. Like I kind of thought, like I don't know about her voice actor, but her voice actor kind of grew on me. I'm not gonna lie, her voice actor grew on me. Yeah, and I feel like definitely that episode with like her birthday and all that stuff, which is kind of like filler. I would say like Jubilee definitely matured a lot, so that's pretty nice. And then Sunspot. Sunspot, he isn't really comfortable in his skin as a mutant, being like in the closet about it to his family, and then later on he's kind of disowned due to like business related decisions from his mom. He's pretty wimpy and he doesn't really use his powers, and he's always scared, but he definitely comes through in the final fight. So I'm just like, yeah, and that's why I kept saying, like, I'm just like, dude, use your powers, damn, bro. like like when him and Jubilee were trapped in the game and all that stuff, I'm like, Sunspot, you got powers, use them. Like, come on, bro. Help her out. Anyways, Storm. So, I mean, after being depowered and stuff, Storm kind of, like, went on her own little side quest and met Forge and kind of conquered her, like, fear of claustrophobia and kind of realized her self-worth. But she's kind of fighting in a battle that's basically, like, the team's ultra combo. That's pretty much how Storm is in the first episode. Her arc was a bit rushed. And for what I hear, like, that specific story kind of needed way more fleshing out. I've been watching a YouTuber. His name is Storm Corey HQ, or Animane, as we all know him as. But because he has 2 channels, and know him best as Animane. But Animane, he does videos about Storm and Starfire from Teen Titans, or from X-Men and Starfire from Teen Titans, because he loves those characters. And I'm a regular on his channel. I'm not a regular. I've been on his channel, but I like watching his videos. He's a cool dude. Knows what he's talking about. He knows the character more than me. So I definitely recommend checking him out for any more like further, like if you want to know more lore or facts about Storm or Starfire, he's the guy. Anyways, Forge. I think this is actually Forge's first present day appearance inside X-Men in this '90s X-Men show. But if you ask me personally, I kind of feel like Forge a little bit of a nothing burger in this show, in my opinion. I just felt like he kind of simped and validated Storm. Like, he simped for Storm, and he validated Storm a lot. And I'm just like, dude, do you have any reasons as to why besides, like, maybe a mutual attraction? But that's just me. And then Professor X. Professor X is okay. Nightcrawler, it's always nice seeing Nightcrawler. Shit. I'm glad to see Nightcrawler. I also wanted, like, Colossus to kind of be in there, too, or Shadowcat. Would have nice to have them in the mix, but hey, it's cool seeing Nightcrawler. I was like, damn. He kind of took Gambit's place after his death, and I was like, damn, that is rough. But hey, I'm here for it. I mean, I like seeing Nightcrawler. So There you go. All right, so I know a lot of people definitely have a problem with Rogue in this series. Now, keep in mind, Rogue was really originally she was a villain at first before she joined the X-Men. Then she joined the X-Men and became more of a hero. But some people kind of forget or don't think about it. But yes, Rogue definitely does have that darkness within her. So of course, like yeah, she might do some things from time to time, and that's what I was saying like before. Like she kind of like that's why she's sympathetic towards Magneto and stuff. Because in the comics, I know they have a thing for each other a little bit there too. But yeah, I mean, Rogue, that's why she's sympathetic towards him. And she can understand that Magneto wants to change his ways and all that stuff and wants to reform. He means well because Rogue has been in that position too, where she was on the other side and she's trying to change. And you know what I mean? So, of course, she's going to extend her hand to Magneto. Then it's revealed that, oh shit, they've been a lot closer even before the series. So, yeah, that's something. But anyways, now I know a lot of people have problems with Rogue because she attacked a bunch of military guys, tried to kill Boulevard Trask and stuff, dropped him off a building, and she threw Captain America's shield, which I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty disrespectful. But I felt like a lot of people kind of reach or overblow that whole moment, in my opinion. But it is what it is. My point is though, Rogue is doing it because obviously because of Gambit's death. I'm not saying I justify her actions, but I understand why she's mad because, again, Gambit got killed by a bunch of Sentinels and died trying to save a lot of people and stuff, So, of course, something had to change, So I know Rogue wanted to go out of her way and make that kind of change. It's not like she went all Injustice Superman and decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to take over the world, you know what I mean, because Lois Lane died or I got tricked into killing her. Yeah. Or you can probably see it that way for all I know. Who knows? But anyways, that was basically Rogue, which kind of reminds me, actually, in case you guys, if any of you guys are Sonic fans, there was a storyline from the Archie Sonic comics, right? The Mecha Sally arc, where Ian Flynn, one of my favorite writers, he actually had an idea like this. And it's funny, too, because Rogue and Gambit are often compared, like, in the Sonic universe and stuff, they're often compared to, like, two of Sonic's, two of his childhood friends, Antoine and Bunny DeColette. Now, in case you don't know who Antoine and Bunny is, Antoine DeColette, he's a Mobian Coyote and stuff. He used to have a thing for Princess Sally, and he used to be a little bit of a love rival for Sonic back if you like watched Sonic SATM the show or if you read the comics. Eventually, he kind of gave up on Princess Sally once when Sally and Sonic became a thing, and Antoine, Bunny started becoming more of a thing too. Yeah, and then Bunny, as you know, she's a Mobian as well, or Robian. She's a rabbit cyborg and all that stuff. But yeah, but in the comics, they got married, and pretty much there was this story arc in the Mecha Sally arc where, if you remember, Antoine was injured trying to save Sally's brother, King Elias at the time, because he was fighting Metal Sonic, and Dr. Eggman made Metal Sonic like self-destruct, and he blew up. And that explosion nearly almost killed Antoine. He was in a coma for a while. And originally, Ian Flynn was going to kill off Antoine that way too. But there was a lot of fan backlash, so they kind of just left him to be in critical condition, okay? He was in a coma. So Bunny thought that Antoine wasn't going to recover, so she decided to decide to leave and join up with, like, her criminal side of the family or whatever, with her uncle and everything. So, yeah. Or her criminal uncle and all that stuff. So yeah, but the series kind of got rebooted around that time, so it's kind of unclear on whether or not like what would have happened. But yeah, I mean, unless you look at Ian Flynn's old notes or whatever, saw some of his ideas, or looked at his his little podcast or whatever, he might have explained it there. But yeah, so I definitely see that as like how it definitely went down for Rogue and Gambit and stuff. Like literally. Antoine, like Gambit, is also French, and Rogue, just like Bunny, is also a Southern Belle. And they went through this exact same thing where the husband died, or the lover, Gambit or Antoine, something happened to them, and then Bunny and or Rogue decided to just leave and just like turn a new leaf, or there was some kind of sign that they were going to turn evil, that kind of thing. So that's basically how it was. But anyways, so that's what that reminds me of. But anyways, as far as Gambit goes, I mean, to be completely honest with you, like the 90s version of Gambit, and this includes this version, is probably the best animated version of Gambit, like as of yet. Like I mean, I know in Evolution and Wolverine, the X-Men, Gambit is kind of more of a villain and a mercenary, and he does like have cool moments from these shows, like beating up the Brotherhood, double crossing Wolverine, messing around with Magneto's daughter. But I guess the tables have definitely turned here. But this universe's version of Gambit is easily the most heroic, trying to escape his past and saving the world. He's the one that that prevents Days of the Future Past by stopping Mystique. Mystique, who was the one who framed him for the crime. Where everybody thought, oh, Gambit was the one that triggered this whole Sentinel thing, and got this whole thing rolling, and he was the one that assassinated Senator Kelly. Nah, that was Mystique. She framed him for it. Gambit stopped it, saved Senator Kelly's life, and then he ended up becoming the president. So there was that. But yeah, and now he's the one that stopped that Sentinel attack on Genosha, which costed him his life. And it's like what Nightcrawler said at his eulogy. Gambit looks down on himself for his past, but he doesn't realize what great of a hero he already is. So definitely rest in peace to Remy LeBeau Gambit. Now, I don't know if Gambit's death is going to be permanent or if it'll be undone. A lot of people are definitely saying or predicting that Gambit might become like he might become a horseman, a part of Apocalypse's thing. So that's on the table. That could definitely be a thing. But if it is permanent, I have nothing against it. It makes things a lot more serious, and this is an old version that they're picking up after so many years, so anything could really happen. But it definitely would be nice to see Gambit alive again. Anyways, Magneto. While I think Magneto has done way too much to be reformed in the comics, I think he really did try to be a hero here. But the wrong people kind of came along and they tested him, and we got him back as a villain. So thanks for that, guys. So I don't blame him for almost going all Hiroshima on the human race after watching a kid like Leech die in his arms. But for obvious reasons, I don't agree ethically with what what he was going to do, and I would have loved to see the story. I would to be honest with you, I would have actually loved to see Magneto stay as the leader of the X-Men for a while, and have him have connections or build up the relationship with him more with Wolverine or Cyclops or versus him just being all stoic, or Jean Grey or Storm. You know what I mean? It definitely would have been nice seeing more of a dynamic and stuff, and that could have been and we could see it inside season 2, because he could have also just he had a moment of weakness in the last couple of episodes of the first season, and maybe in the second season. Oh, okay, maybe he probably has changed, because he's there trying to help out Professor X and all of them. So yeah. And then Cable. Now, it was definitely nice seeing Cable connect with his parents a lot more, like Scott and Jean. Since his parents weren't kind of aware of his true identity back in the original series. So it was definitely nice seeing that kind of unfold in a Terminator kind of style, where, Kyle Reese, Sarah Connor, John Connor, yeah. Even though Nathan is kind of older than both his parents, we do see, how much he misses Madeline, or how he tries to keep his distance because of how, sensitive the subject is for him. And my favorite quote from him was, "My mother was a world-class telekinetic, tends to not skip a generation." To me, it just gives off that epic wing quote, something that you say before you use an ultra type of combo or whatever in a fighting game or a video game in general. Yeah. So I really like that. So yeah, Cable was pretty cool here too. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the characters so far. Now, this is my rating for X-Men 87. Now, the story to me is an 8.6 out of 10. The characterization is a 9 out of 10. The voice acting to me is also a 9 out of 10. The only voice actor I would say that wasn't the strongest in my opinion was Rogues, but I would say that speech she gave towards the end, where she was joined up with Magneto, was probably her best acted line in my opinion. But everything else, I'm not really a huge fan of. It just doesn't have that same kind of seductive charm. And I get it. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I was kind of impressed with Storm's voice actress, and especially Wolverine's. I was like, oh, Cal Dodd, he still got it, because based off of what I was looking at the trailers and stuff, it kind of looked like his voice was a little off or whatever, And hell, shit, I thought that too about Jack Black, back in that Super Mario movie, where he was voicing Bowser. I was like, oh, but he was pretty damn good. Or a lot of people were saying that about Chris Pratt as Mario, but when the movie came out and everybody stopped complaining, oh shit, why is Chris Pratt voicing Mario? Oh my god, Chris Pratt's gonna ruin this Mario movie for me. Movie comes out, everybody loves it, you know. And it's like that here too with X-Men 97, you know. So Wolverine's voice actor, yeah, he definitely did sound pretty good. Like everyone's voice actor was pretty good. Okay. The cameos and references, that was also pretty good. It was definitely nice seeing a lot of characters, you know. So that's a 10 out of 10 automatically. And then the fight choreography. The fight choreography to me was also a 10 out of 10. I have no complaints about it at all. I was like, oh shit. It was definitely nice seeing the characters use their powers, use their skills. You see Nightcrawler doing the little three sword style, you know, like how he does in the comics and all that. You know, so yeah, like where he's like using two sabers and then the other saber he has picked up with his tail and all that stuff. Nice seeing that. I don't think he did that back in the original X-Men show. Cyclops, you know, him throwing hands and like, you know, shooting his optic blast and all that stuff. That was pretty nice. Yeah, Storm using her powers and stuff, like using the lightning to turn sand into glass and all that stuff. Like that wasn't like that was pretty damn crazy. Like yeah, there was like a bunch of other stuff too. What else was there? Like yeah, so I gotta say like yeah, the fight choreography was pretty awesome, especially that last fight with Bastion and stuff, where everybody the X-Men were fighting Bastion. Yeah, that was pretty nice too. Like yeah, I mean yeah, it was pretty much some pretty good fight choreography, 10 out of 10. So, anyways, my overview is it's a pretty good series so far that kind of kept me coming back for more because of just of how good it was. Like, I kind of questioned the validity of the animation, the creative decisions, and how political that this would, you know, become to the point where I just didn't even want to bother at first because, you know, it's X-Men. So, you know, people are trying to use the whole excuse of, well, it's X-Men. X-Men's always been political, blah, blah, blah. But I don't come here for X-Men, for politics. I come to watch X-Men because I want to see a superhero team kick some ass. That's what I came here for X-Men for. But after giving it a chance and being like kind of surprised that Disney of all things didn't actually screw this one up, despite the kind of brand damage that they kind of caused Marvel and Star Wars as of recent, which is kind of, you know, it's worth the watch at least. So I would definitely say that. Like I know X-Men 97 is not exactly doing too well in terms of like, you know, viewership and stuff on Disney Plus, but that's because everyone's watching it online. People don't care about Disney Plus. I don't care about Disney Plus. Because, yeah, I mean, shit, they have more shows like X-Men 97. Hell, I just might actually consider getting back Disney Plus, but in the meantime, nah, I'm good. But anyways, but I'm not sure if they'll deliver like this in the second season, but whether they do or don't, I wouldn't really sweat the small stuff. For right now, I'm like, what they have, this is actually pretty good. I'm like, all right, this is solid. So I definitely got to say for my score, it's a 93%, which is an A-, which is what I would give the show.